Kevin is a very picky eater, and in no way, shape, or form would he ever eat the grilled octopus.
Gator, the is that? Grilled octopus.
Hey everybody, Chef Gator here, chef in and on the hit TV series Yellowstone. Today we're gonna be making bourbon pineapple bread pudding, one of my all-time favorites and a cast favorite for some of our very talented cast members such as Kevin Costner, Kelly Reilly, and Cole Hauser. Step one is we're going to cube up our bread and get it toasted. I would recommend using staler bread. Day old, we always say in the South, day old French bread. You can use anything you have. As you can imagine, in my kitchen, I have tons of bread all the time. In the conditions we work in, a lot of bread goes stale. So stale bread's great. You can use donuts, pastries, croissants, doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. Today, we have some beautiful, nice challah bread. We're going to cube this bread up into about 1-inch pieces. It doesn't need to be perfect. It can be a little bit different odds and ends. If you don't feel comfortable, you can also just rip this bread apart. You really don't have to use a knife. You can just tear it up, it's fine. So this recipe is great. I always use a lot of fresh fruit in what we do. We eat a lot of just cut fruit and we put it in a lot of dishes, salads. So I always have a ton of pineapples around. And I always have stale bread, so this dish is really useful to me to put out a nice dessert with my huge meals that I do for the cast and crew. If you could guess, we always have extra bourbon hanging around on Yellowstone, so it just came naturally to add alcohol to the mix. Got my oven preheated to 350 degrees. We're gonna get a nice baking sheet, give it a quick spray. You can use butter if you want, but for the sake of this, we're gonna use spray. We will add plenty of butter later, I promise. Get your bread on there. And we're gonna give it a quick toast. If your bread's extra stale, this is gonna happen really fast, but this bread is not that stale, so it's gonna be in there in about 10 minutes. If you start smelling toast, it's ready. While that's cooking, I'd like to tell you guys how I ended up here and how I got on Yellowstone. Several years ago, I had developed a nice following for myself down in Louisiana, working on film and television productions. And Yellowstone came to fruition, and some friends of mine and colleagues that I knew over the years ended up on Yellowstone. And I got a phone call in the middle of the night one night from a couple of the producers on the show that were sitting at a lunch table at midnight, because that's when we have lunch on Yellowstone. They asked me if I wanted to come up to Utah and work on a big cowboy TV show. And I said, well, of course I want to come work on a big cowboy TV show. I didn't know what it was called, what it was about. All I knew is they told me that there was a cowboy that was in charge and that he was very, very hungry. And the only thing I needed to do was come and feed the guy. And I said, great, I'm the perfect guy for this job. About 4 or 5 weeks into me working there was when I got to be on the show for the first time. Taylor, I saw him scribble just on the side of a script, an ink pen. He wrote me in the show and said, hey Gator, I wrote you in the show today, so just, later we're gonna call you and, bring you up. I said, oh, okay, background or something, you just need me in the shot or something. Somebody came and got me, one of our assistant directors, and said, Gator, your scene's up next. And I was like, oh, okay, do I look good? Like, is this good? And of course I was covered in grease and barbecue sauce, and I had, biscuit dough up to my elbows, and the costumer said, oh, no, you look great. This is perfect. And I was like, you sure this is perfect? And they said, yeah, no, this is great. So again, I figured I'd be in the background of the show, just doing whatever. And no, I had a camera in front of my face, just like this. And Taylor Sheridan behind the camera. And he said, okay, go. I didn't know what else to do. I panicked. So I went back to the basics and just started making dinner. And I can very, very vividly remember Taylor Sheridan behind the camera saying, oh yeah, that's great. And I said, that's great. I'm not even doing anything. And he explained later, Yellowstone's always been very important about having everything be realistic and genuine and authentic. And I think that's why Yellowstone's been so successful for many other reasons. But I think it being about real stuff and actually getting to see real cowboy life and real ranch life. Obviously, we don't murder people as much, but where it's very authentic what we do, and everybody's actually riding and roping and cooking and kicking around horse do. And after that, it really became pretty important that I was part of the show, and I think I belong there very much so. I smell toast. That means our bread is just about ready. Just dried out nicely, because we're gonna need them to be dry to soak up all the custard. Now that we've got our stale bread nice and toasty out of the oven, we are going to prepare our custard, which is what our bread will soak in and eventually become our beautiful bread pudding. For our custard, for our bread pudding, we're gonna need 4 large eggs and 4 large egg yolks. We're gonna need a cup of half and half and a cup of milk as well. 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. You can use brown, raw, whatever you want. Today we have white sugar. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, half teaspoon of kosher salt, or just a pinch, you know, just to give it a little bit of savoriness in the dish. 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, some fresh ground nutmeg. Okay, so we'll start with the eggs. We're gonna give ourselves the 4 eggs, and then we're gonna do 4 egg yolks. And we'll save those whites for something else later. The extra egg yolks in there will make this a little bit richer and more luxurious without adding too much volume to your dish, as the egg whites would add a lot. I'm gonna give my eggs a quick little beat here, just to start breaking them up before we add all our liquid and make a big mess. So you're not trying to beat eggs into a big bowl of liquid. All right, we're gonna do our cup of half and half, and we're gonna do our cup of milk. And again, just get that incorporated before you start adding too much more. And then we're gonna go in with our 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And again, just kind of keep that mixing in there. I know it seems like a lot of liquid, but you're gonna want this because it's gonna make your whole dish extra creamy and gooey and delicious, especially when you get that sauce on there. We're gonna go in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're gonna go in a pinch of salt, our cinnamon, get that mixed in. And our friend Alton Brown would kill me if I used pre-ground nutmeg, so we're gonna grind our own. It's so easy. And it's a 1/4 teaspoon of that, so just whenever you feel like your hand's getting tired, that sounds like enough. And mix that in too. This is a dish that is very useful to me on Yellowstone because Kevin Costner is a pretty difficult person to feed, mostly just because he's very simple. Simple ingredients and simple recipes like bread pudding are great. I've got my toasted bread here in a bowl, and we are gonna take our custard mixture here, pour it over our bread, and give it a real nice mix, and we're gonna let it soak for about 30 minutes or as long as you can. You guys can use a spoon or tongs or a spatula to do this. When I make this for work, there isn't a big enough utensil to do anything like that, so I use my whole arms. But today we're just gonna use our hands, and we're gonna get our bread nice and stirred up. And you really want it to be soggy. Just let it kind of incorporate, get every piece, and this is why it's essential to toast that bread first, so it is dry enough to absorb all this. Okay, we're gonna butter our pan, and then we're gonna pour our bread mixture in the pan and let it sit for about a half hour. For a nice little trick, you take a paper towel, square it up, and you can just dip that in your softened butter, and instead of getting your hands all nasty and greasy, you can just rub that in your pan like that. That's what I always like to do. And then we'll go in with our bread mixture. Don't be afraid to get your hands a little dirty on this one. Just pack your bread down into that pan. And you can do this in a cast iron or Dutch oven or whatever kind of dish you have. We're gonna do it in this bread tin today, but just get it all nice and flat. You don't want any air holes in there. And then that's gonna go in the oven at 350 to bake. Kevin is a very picky eater, and in no way, shape, or form would he ever eat the grilled octopus.
Pass me the potatoes.
I remember doing that scene and actually grilling the octopus for the scene. We were having some trouble getting it to look really charred. Whenever you need something to be hotter or more on fire, I'm your guy. We brought it outside and I got a big flamethrower and I torched the octopus so it got a nice crisp on it. If you recall the shot, it was very grotesque looking. We made sure to leave the whole octopus on the plate, keep the tentacles intact and not put it in a sauce or anything. It was quite a lot. I sat that down in front of Kevin. He had not seen the octopus at all. So I set this big sea spider down in front of poor Kevin Costner. He looked at me like like he was a little kid and I just stepped on his cat or something or stole his lollipop, because he gave me this look and it was genuine reaction that you see in the show of, Gator, what the hell is that?
Gator. Yeah. The is that? Grilled octopus.
Mediterranean diet, Daddy.
Considering that this is a man that before he met me, I think solely may have lived off of canned chili and hot dogs. So it was a lot for me to put a Mediterranean diet in front of him. Our bread pudding's been soaking for about a half hour. We're about ready to go in the oven. We are going to add our 1/4 cup of melted butter. If you want to leave this out, you can, but we wouldn't do that on Yellowstone. Me and Kevin love our butter and our sugar, so we're gonna pour that right on top. Just let it soak in there, because, you know, why not add butter, right? Butter makes everything better. We're gonna pop this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 40-45 minutes, or until your house smells delicious. While our bread pudding bakes, we are going to make our bourbon pineapple sauce. And you can use a super ripe pineapple with this, but I actually kind of like a little less ripe pineapple because it gives you extra bite in the sauce. So we're gonna take the head off the pineapple and then we'll just carve it up real quick. Can't tell you how many pineapples I've cut in my life, but it's more than most folks, I imagine. My way, you may have your own, but I always cut it in fourths. Take out your core like that. Of each piece, you can lay it down, take out your core. Good sharp knife helps. You can put down a paper towel if that makes you feel better. I like mine a little rough chop, but you can do them a little smaller if you like. Now we are going to make our bourbon pineapple sauce, which is one of the more delicious and decadent sauces that I make. We only have rye today. You can use any kind of American whiskey you want. Wouldn't use the other stuff, but bourbon works great, rye whiskey works great. Anything brown and from America would be fine. And we're gonna add 1 whole cup of whiskey in there. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's supposed to be a lot, and it is. And then, you know, chefs always add a little extra for themselves too. 1 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and give that a nice little stir. You don't wanna have the heat too high or you'll burn all of this. Now that we've got our sauce going, we're gonna add our pineapple. It's about 2 cups, so not quite a whole pineapple. You can save the rest for the kids, eat it yourself, put it in a cocktail, whatever you wanna do. This is a classic style meal that we would eat over at Camp Kevin. So when we're working at the ranch up in Montana, Kevin has a little camp set up and he has his big bus. It's always parked next to my kitchen for some reason. When he smells stuff like this cooking, I always get the gesture to come on over and I'll bring him a nice dessert with a big scoop of ice cream. And
He's got a sweet tooth.
does he now? Kevin always likes to tell me how he's on a diet and off the sugar, and then he'll ask me to make him apple pie. Pretty much the same day usually. Kevin may or may not have a sweet tooth. All right, everybody, we've got our bread pudding out of the oven, and it looks like we're right on time because the sauce is just finished up reducing as well. We are gonna cut a slice and plate it up, and then we're gonna put our pineapple bourbon sauce right on top. All right, guys, perfect for any dessert, especially in the fall, the holidays. Pineapple bourbon bread pudding. Nice and rich with all the eggs in there. A little spicy from the nutmeg and cinnamon. Extra boozy, just the way we like it. All of our friends on Yellowstone, they look forward to this kind of stuff when we get into the fall weather. It starts getting cold, a little rainy maybe. Hard out there for a day, and at the end of the day, me and Kevin like to sit by the fire and have a nice piece of bread pudding. Hey everyone, I hope you get to enjoy this simple but delicious recipe and share it with your friends and family. Find recipes like this and many others on Delish.com or in my new official Dutton Ranch Family Cookbook. Thanks everyone, goodbye. Happy eating.